If you like what you saw out of Desmond Ridder last night in his preseason debut, like the video because I think there were some very encouraging takeaways from his game against the Bengals. I'm going to break it all down on today's show along with some overreactions. But if you like what you saw at number 9, hit that thumbs up button. Now, as I was saying, on today's show, we're going to run through some overreactions and kind of talk about whether it's a fair overreaction or we're getting caught up in the preseason Kool-Aid. But let's start by talking about the most important player as far as the Falcons have this year, and that is, of course, the quarterback, Desmond Ridder. And I'm going to say Ridder looks good, but not great. He was very cool, calm, and collective in the pocket. 7 for 9, 80 yards. Unfortunately, not a bad throw, but a bad decision in the red zone, which might have been pass interference anyway. So it's not the worst interception I've ever seen, but unfortunately, he did turn it over in the red zone, so we got to hold some points away from him because of that. But at the end of the day, I think Ridder looked like a preseason quarterback, where there's a lot of good things, there's a lot of encouraging things, but there are some things that you want to correct now in August so you don't see them again in September. But at the end of the day, you saw the Falcons get Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, all involved on that opening drive. Ridder was 7 for 9. I think he still has a little bit of accuracy issues. Some of those throws weren't really on the money, and you had some one-handed grabs being made by Pitts and Robinson. But at the end of the day, Ridder looked good, but not great. Now, let's get into some overreaction, shall we? Starting with this. The Falcons, are they keeping 5 safeties? I know it's preseason, and this is unfortunately the nature of the beast. If you are a diehard, pigskin fan and you watch preseason football, you end up getting caught up in the second and third stringers. And that's what I'm doing here with the 7th-round pick out of Alabama. That is DeMarcco Hellams, and I think he is an absolute stud. Rolly and I are on the same page that Hellams, as your safety 3 or 4, is a really good safety room altogether. But at the end of the day, it is preseason football, and he is making a very difficult choice on Terry Fontenot, and it's not going to be easy to move on from him. And after 2 interceptions through 2 preseason games, I don't think Atlanta is going to move on from him. His PFF grades, by the way, against the Bengals were off the charts. 92.1 overall. Now, PFF is not the word of God, but it's definitely a good starting point. And for them to have him at 92.1 for a single game, that is not something you see even by Patrick Mahomes standards every single week. The kid just continues to make plays. 2 interceptions in 2 games, like I said. He is making it very difficult to make a roster without him on it. Now, at the end of the day, we're going to roll around to week 1, and Jesse Bates and Richie Grant are hopefully going to play every single snap. But if there is an injury that pops up, I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable knowing that you've got potentially Hellams stepping onto the field, or Hawkins or Abernathy, because this safety room is very deep, and they might have something in the 7th rounder out of Alabama. But how many safeties do you think the Falcons will end up keeping? I know we're getting into the weeds here, but most teams tend to roll with 4 safeties. So do you believe that between the locks of Bates, Grant, Hawkins, and then I'll toss in, you got Hellams and Abernathy, are 5 going to make it out of that room right there, or do you think they'll ultimately roll with 4 safeties? Moving on to our second overreaction, Josh Ali should make this roster. If you want to be an under-the-radar UDFA wide receiver and make a 53-man roster, join the Atlanta Falcons, because their wide receiver room is definitely open for business, and Ali has been making a strong case to make the wide receiver room here in the for the 53-man roster. Last night, he had 4 targets, 3 grabs for 39 yards. They just kept going to him over the middle of the field. He was a favorite target for whether it was Logan Woodside or whether it was Taylor Heineke. Ali, out of Kentucky, continues to draw attention from the coaching staff in a good way. And now we talk about the wide receiver room. And there are 3 guys I would say are locks to make the roster: Drake London, Mac Hollins, and Scotty Miller. Kadir Hodge suffered an ankle injury in the tie against the Bengals, so fingers crossed everything is good on that front. But then you've got open season battle between Josh Ali, Penny Hart, Slade Bolden even had a grab, J.J. Arthega-Whiteside. So someone or two is going to emerge from that grouping right there and join the top 5, maybe 6 wide receivers. At the end of the day, I think Atlanta's going to roll with 5 wide receivers. They're just not going to be an air raid offense that requires an extra guy in this spot. So if you're going to only roll out with a lot of 2 wide receiver sets, you only really need Drake London and Matt Collins, Scotty Miller in the slot occasionally, and then you've got 2 backups in Kadero Hodge and I believe Josh Ali. Now, like I said, the injury front on Kadero Hodge, he suffered an ankle injury. Unfortunately, we did not see him return to the game. I don't have any update on his status at this time, but fingers crossed everything is okay for Hodge because the Falcons are relatively thin at wide receiver, and sure, it's only a backup, so it's not the end of the world, but you still hate to see it. Now, make sure, by the way, you are subscribed to the channel. We're going to keep you guys in the know all regular season long. So if you are not subscribed and you're looking for a Falcons YouTube channel, consider hitting that sub button down below. Now, I do want to give some shout-outs, by the way, to those of you that shared our content and recent subscribers and whatnot. It's me. It's you. Falcons take dubs. Well, they took the tie yesterday, but hopefully next week. We got Jeremy DeMann. We've got Black Jedi. Pitts for President. Shout out to all of you for sharing our content and being subscribers here. And if you want to get a shout out on a future show, well, hit that sub button down below and we'll be sure to get you included. The third overreaction here. I think you can expect to see a lot of pistol formations. I don't think this is an overreaction. I think we're starting to get a better sense of what Arthur Smith's offense is going to look like under Desmond Ridder, who's got a much bigger arm than Marcus Mariota had last year, and Arthur Smith definitely took that into account when drawing up routes and whatnot for wide receivers and game plans. But we saw a lot of pistol yesterday. We didn't see any crazy, fun, creative plays. But if you're looking for an insight into what Atlanta wants to do on offense this year, they want to run the football. They want to have quick passes. They don't want Desmond Ridder standing in the pocket for 3+ seconds and waiting for very long and developed routes to come about. No, they want to get the ball out of his hands quickly or get it into Bijan's belly. Fourth overreaction now coming out of this preseason game. Bijan Robinson is going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Well, might be a bit of an overreaction. He only had 4 carries, so hard to make that big draw after just 1 series on offense. But we have the Bijan run, right? We had that first touch where he just spun out of a tackle or 2, picked up 12 yards and a first down. He ended up rushing for 20 yards. Bijan looked so explosive. He looked like a guy that was just a men amongst boys, where you saw what the Falcons saw when they took him top 10, which is a very dynamic and gifted and talented rusher who offers so much more in the pass game and pass blocking. Bijan is the complete package. He is going to be featured a lot in this Falcons offense. And after that first run, you probably saw Arthur Smith's eyes twinkle and go, all right, let's bubble wrap him. We know Bijan's ready to roll for the regular season. We got 1 series in. Maybe he plays next week, but I am perfectly content with shutting him down to avoid injury in the final preseason game because he looked like he could run against NFL defenses after just 1 carry in the preseason. So be honest with me. Will Bijan win Offensive Rookie of the Year? I truthfully do believe so. I think Bijan is your best candidate to do so. Last year we had wide receiver Garrett Wilson win it. The wide receivers this year that went first round, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quinn Johnston, Zay Flowers. I just don't think Jordan Addison, this is a wide receiver grouping that's going to run away with that award like Garrett Wilson, who was almost a 8th overall selection a year ago. Whereas Bijan, I think he could get that done. 5th and final overreaction now. I think the Falcons' offensive line is a little bit sketch. And that scares the shit out of me because this team's success, ladies and gentlemen, what have I been saying all year long, is rooted in the 5 guys up front. And the offensive line, at least the starters, looked a little queasy, right? We had the best of the bunch out there, Chris Lindstrom, getting a holding call in the first play. Now, I thought they were ticky-tacky calls on Lindstrom, but I don't know how you could toss out Jalen Mayfield anymore. The guy was a turnstile yesterday. He was kind of a disaster. Bergeron at left guard looked like a rookie left guard making his preseason debut. He definitely had some things that he'll look back on tape and go, that's not pretty. We got to clean that up. But I think there were some positives from Bergeron as well. His PFF grades against the Bengals, 69.1 overall, much better against the run, but against the pass, I mean, I think it's like the SAT. As long as you put your name on it, your pass blocking grade for just walking on the field should be better than 26.6. But in 23 snaps, he was a liability in that department. So there is a lot to work on from Bergeron's side of things after that first preseason game. If you're looking for some stats regarding the offensive line, 116 rushing yards, 4.3 yards a carry. That's a good number. 4 sacks allowed, 5 penalties on the offensive line. Those two, not so good. 4 penalties is a bit of, 4 sacks and 5 penalties are much higher than you want to see. But the good news is it's preseason. Like, this is the time to make some of those penalty mistakes, to have those pre-snap errors and whatnot, because you want to get those corrected now and not in the regular season. So I'm not going to hit the panic button, but I'm not, super rejuvenated by what I saw out of the Falcons offensive line yesterday. They have some work to do before week 1 of the regular season. That's not true for everyone on this roster, a.k.a. our sweet Prince Bijan, but the offensive line, they have some film to watch. They've got some plows to move and whatnot. They have a lot of work to do, I think, before week 1 against Carolina. So let me know, are you worried about the offensive line? Type W for worried, type C for calm. Give me your honest opinion down in the comment section. I'm calm right now, but I'm going to be worried if this continues into the regular season. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday and coming and hanging out with producer Rolly and myself. We will sign off, and we'll see everyone later.